How long does it take to get every single Pokemon in the generation they were released in? That is a question I want to answer as I complete my Living Dex, and today we're going to play through the 3DS generations. First, let's set the ground rules. I need to capture every Pokemon, I need to capture every boxable form, Minior and Pumpkaboo count, whereas Savali and Zygarde's complete form does not. Use legitimate or as legitimate methods as possible. Glitches count, and so do emulated events. Now let's get started.
Is this a new form of Mewtwo? Is this a totally different Pokemon? Is this, Mew 3? Is it an evolution?
If you haven't watched the Game Boy or DS era videos, I have a routine where I go for the most time-consuming Pokemon first before I go for the rest of the generation. However, this Pokemon has to be the most unnecessary for me to get, but I wanted to go after it no matter how pedantic it may seem. As most of you know, Gen 6 introduced Mega Evolutions, as well as related mechanic Primal Reversion for Kyogre and Groudon. Now these forms are done through the use of held items, either Mega Stones or the red or blue orb. This is the case for all but one Mega Evolution, Rayquaza. The meteorite you get after fighting either Archie or Maxie at Mount Chimney slowly turns into Rayquaza's Mega Stone. Instead of it being held, Rayquaza actually eats the Mega Stone. And to Mega Evolve, Rayquaza needs to learn the move Dragon Ascent. Now, the Rayquaza I caught in Emerald won't know Dragon Ascent. Even if I put it in Oros and taught it to Rayquaza, it cannot Mega Evolve until the story's Rayquaza eats the Mega Stone. So, we're going to play through Alpha Sapphire to get the Rayquaza who can Mega Evolve as the only Primal/Mega we have to obtain. And while we're at it, we're just going to get the Cosplay Pikachu, and all we have to do is re-dye its tail in order to get it into bank. While we're on the subject, can I rant for a second? I always found it so frustrating that X and Y introduces the fact that Lucario was the first Pokemon to Mega Evolve, and that Mega Evolution was caused by the ultimate weapon. Then, the very next game, Oros flips the script and says that Mega Evolution comes from Rayquaza and meteors. You could say, oh, it's Sycamore's theory that it came from the ultimate weapon, but honestly, it just feels like bad writing to me. Especially in the games that introduce a similar transformation, Primal forms. It makes no sense to me that Groudon and Kyogre have Primal forms, but Rayquaza has a Mega. Not only does it have a Mega, like I said, it's the only one to not require a Mega Stone. Now you might say that the Primals are different because Groudon and Kyogre have special stones for them already, the red orb and the blue orb. But you may or may not know, Rayquaza has an orb too. The Jade Orb introduced in Heart Gold and Soul Silver in order for Rayquaza to appear in the embedded tower in those games. Anyways, on to Kalos. Luckily, there are not a ton of version exclusive Pokemon. You have the small fairies, Swirlix and Spritzy, the water boys, Skrelp and Clauncher, as well as the box legendary. We blast through Y and get exclusives, as well as the 1% White Flower Flabebe while looking for Spritzy. Speaking of the Flabebe line, we got a special Floette, AZ's Eternal Flower Floette. I don't know if it should be added to my Living Dex. On one hand, it's a special form with its own models, stats, and even a special move and shiny form. But on the other hand, it was never officially released, and it doesn't have a render in Pokemon Home. So let me know what you think I should do with it. Now the hardest challenge of this run has to be getting all of the Vivillon patterns on the 3DS. However, I have a specific video talking about that. We run through the game catching as many Pokemon as we can, however in the mid to late game, I've seen an increasing pattern. Not including forms, Kalos introduces the least amount of Pokemon at 72. Meanwhile, the Kalos Dex has a total of 457 Pokemon. This difference in new Pokemon versus existing Pokemon means that there's a ton of routes where I only need to catch 1 or 2 Pokemon. And due to the lack of new evolutions or forms, means that I only have to capture 1 returning Pokemon for the Dex, and that is Eevee to evolve into Sylveon, making it quick to run through as compared to others. And weirdly enough, the dynamic of returning Pokemon versus new Pokemon feels a lot better than, say, Johto's dynamic. Maybe it's a lack of consistently repeating Pokemon, I couldn't say. Anyways, on the topic of Sylveon, Gen 6 starts the trend of just real weird evolution methods, like Sylveon with its high affection, while also having a fairy type move, Malamar needing the 3DS upside down, Pangoro needing a dark type on the team, and Sliggoo needing to be in the rain. Now, Gen 7 also introduces some weird evolution methods, but it gets crazy after Gen 8. But it's just a weird trend that I started to notice. After you capture Xerneas, there are a few Pokemon left, one of them being Noibat in Terminus Cave. This is also a good area to go to because the TM for Shadow Ball is here, a move that would be very helpful to us. And on the way to get the Shadow Ball TM, I run into this. Full odds shiny Durant. I love this thing, especially the green eyes. It is also important to note for those of you who don't know X and Y, they were the first games to introduce the 1 in 4096 shiny odds. I feel like we're gonna have a discussion about this in the Switch era video, so I'm not gonna touch on the change of odds today, but just be aware of them. There's one more major challenge to overcome, Pumpkaboo. Pumpkaboo has 4 different forms: small, average, large, and supersize. And so does its evolution Gourgeist. How bad can this be? Well, it took 2 hours and I caught a ton of repeat Pumpkaboo. And there seems to be a method to get, I believe it was the supersize form, but for the rest, it's just plain luck. Now that we make it to the league, we also get the mythicals, Diancie, Hoopa, and Volcanion. I also need to grab a second Hoopa because according to the internet, you can deposit Unbound form of Hoopa starting in Gen 7. We beat Diantha and AZ using his own Floette, and we get to the last Pokemon we need, Zygarde. Now into Gen 7, we're going to start by playing the Sun and Moon demo. The demo introduces a special Greninja with the Battle Bond ability, where when you knock out a Pokemon during battle, you transform into Ash Greninja, a Mega-like state given to Ash's Greninja in the X and Y anime. This form is only transferable to Sun and Moon, not the Ultra games, so we're going to send it to Sun, who is also going to grab Poplio for the starters. And pop quiz time. I'm going to play the game from the very beginning to the first time I can enter a Pokemon Center and use a PC. Can you guess how long it takes? The answer will be at the end of the video. Speaking of Ash, when we jump into Ultra Moon, we're going to obtain a ton of Pikachu wearing Ash's hats from Kanto and Johto, Hoenn, Sinnoh, Unova, Kalos, and Alola, as well as the Pikachu with a special QR code. The one that's from the weird alternate universe movies that were happening back in the day. We also got the majority of the Alolan forms in Ultra Moon, well, besides Alolan Vulpix because it's exclusive to Ultra Sun. We also get our first Cosmog, Poipole, and Type Null, as well as the exclusives Stakataka, Celesteela, Pheromosa, and Lunala. And we're going to grab the mythicals Magearna with its QR code, Marshadow, and Zeraora. We are also going to swap a specific Pokemon. You see, when making this video, the 3DS servers were shutting down. And to celebrate its last few moments, one of my favorite creators of the platform, Absolblog's Pokemon, did these fun Wonder Trade streams, and I actually received a Pokemon from that, an Alolan Raticate. so it's going to be put into the collection. Ultra Sun was fairly easy, with some highlights being getting the version exclusives, Passimian, Turtonator, Alolan Vulpix, Kartana, Blacephalon, Buzzwole, Solgaleo, as well as catching all 7 forms of Minior and all 4 forms of Oricorio. You know how we talked about what forms are the quote-unquote base forms in the 3DS era video? The base form of Oricorio is the Fire-type form, which is found on the 3rd island, not the electric form found on the 1st island in the game. It was just a really weird instance that I thought was pretty interesting. After we become the champion, we get our 2nd Poipole, Type Null, and Cosmog, and we evolve them. We also get the legendary Pokemon of the islands, Tapu Koko, Tapu Bulu, Tapu Lele, and Tapu Fini. We also do the Ultra Wormhole rides and get every single Ultra Beast. That is it for the 3DS, but there are some more Pokemon we need to catch. So let's Pokemon Go to our phones and capture the mythical Meltan and Melmetal. Meltan and its evolutions are the first Pokemon to be introduced in a side game. And in order to spawn them, we need to transfer a Pokemon from Go to one of the Let's Go games or Pokemon Home, and use the mystery box to have Meltans appear for 30 minutes. After we send some back to the professor and use some berries while we're catching, we have the necessary candies to evolve a Meltan into Melmetal. As for getting them into our collection, you'll have to wait until next time. And that is it. Every Gen 6 and Gen 7 Pokemon caught. X took 23 hours and 44 minutes. Y took 9 hours and 22 minutes. The Sun and Moon demo took about an hour. Sun took 41 minutes. Ultra Moon took 24 hours and 23 minutes. Ultra Sun took 27 hours and 41 minutes. And finally, Go took 30 minutes. Meaning Gen 6 took 1 day, 9 hours, and 6 minutes. And Gen 7 has so far has taken 2 days, 5 hours, and 15 minutes. This run of the Dex Challenge was filled with fun yet strange coincidences. I was finishing up with X and Y when Legend ZA was announced, and the decade anniversary of me going to France for the first time. And when the solar eclipse happened was when I was halfway through Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. Also, again, the 3DS and Wii U servers came to a close while doing this leg of the challenge, and I would definitely say that I grew up with the GBA and DS games. However, the 3DS games have a ton of nostalgia. However, the Ultra games definitely had those rose-tinted glasses slipping. Oftentimes they were a grind and not in the best way, and I'm glad that the numbers are showing that and it wasn't all in my head. But thank you guys so much for watching, as we are finally almost there, and I'll see you next time for the Switch era.